Good morning, everyone. This is Father Nate, missionary priest in Italy, and thanks for joining us today, March 4th, on No Greater Delight, our podcast on Marian feasts and Marian meditations. Well, today we have a great number of celebrations, and they'll take us to Italy, to France, and even down to Cameroon. So first up, we have Our Lady of the Guard, Notre Dame de la Garde. There's no date mentioned here, but the story dates back to the 13th century. At some point, when a lone French fisherman was fishing off the harbor of Marseille. Well, before he knew what was happening, a terrible storm came up. His boat was tossed about like a shell and was filling with water faster than he could bail it out. He lost his rudder, his mast snapped, and as he was cutting himself free from the rigging with a knife, he was able to save himself, at least temporarily, from drowning. But the situation looked hopeless, and so he cast his gaze upon the city, sadly. But dimly through the gloom, he suddenly saw a solitary figure of a lady, dressed in white, standing on top of the rock that overlooked the harbor, right? She seemed to be extending her hand, as if to say that she would help him get to shelter and to find the harbor. At once it came to him that the lady so calmly defying the wind and rain could only be the Blessed Mother. So he prayed to her, asking for help. Almost immediately, his boat stopped being tossed about, righted itself, and was pushed by a friendly gust of wind. And so it went straight into the harbor, right, until it ran ashore right at the very foot of the mountain. So stepping onto the shore, the fisherman fell to his knees and thanked the Blessed Virgin, and then rushed home to see his worried family. Now, the story of his rescue through Our Lady's assistance quickly spread throughout the port. It's remembered that other sailors, too, on numerous occasions during severe storms, had also seen the figure of the lady on top of the rock. And always, whenever she appeared, the angry seas were calmed, and their boats made it safely into shelter. Soon everybody came to believe that the rock was the spot on which the Blessed Virgin, Our Lady of the Guard, would appear whenever her help was desperately needed, right? So in thanksgiving to her, the sailors of Marseille, between the years 1213 and 1218, erected a chapel on top of the rock, and in that chapel they enshrined a lovely statue of Our Lady. Around 1544, the chapel was replaced with a large church, and that's where the statue was transferred. Sometime during the French Revolution, unfortunately, the statue of Our Lady of the Guard was destroyed, but in the 1830s, a new statue was dedicated. Now, we're told that Our Lady didn't just help sailors, but in 1832, she also helped during a severe epidemic of cholera, right? So the people decided to make an appeal to Mary when this epidemic hit the city of Marseille. So they made a procession, climbed the mountain, removed the statue from the chapel, brought it down, and carried it through the streets. They said that almost immediately the epidemic waned, and in a few days it vanished. So they called her Mary, Our Lady of Help, or sometimes called Our Lady of Mariners, right? And again, as her fame spread, because of all these different events, more people came. The shrine got another name, right? And then called Notre Dame de la Garde, Our Lady of the Guard, or the Guardian, right? So if you go to Marseille today, on the hill of Notre Dame de la Garde, there's a beautiful basilica, which was built in 1864. And again, that site's been occupied at least since 1214, right? You'll notice inside there's tons of votive offerings, and model ships actually hung in all parts of it as a sign of thanksgiving from all the mariners who've been assisted by their Heavenly Mother. Next stop, we jump down to Notre Dame de Victoire in Yaoundé in Cameroon. From 1922 until 1943, the French priest François Xavier Voigt served as the apostolic vicar of Cameroon. Now, during the Second World War, he vowed to build a sanctuary to Our Lady if the conflict spared Cameroon, right? This vow was fulfilled, but only after his death, right? It was on March 4th, 1952, that Monsieur René Graffin placed the first stone of the future Cathedral of Our Lady of Victories in the capital city. The cathedral was dedicated in 1955, and Yaoundé became a Catholic archbishopric rather than a missionary vicariate, and Monsignor Graffin became the first archbishop. After his death in 1961, the church gave Yaoundé its first native archbishop, Jean Zoa, who, in 1978, asked another prelate from Cameroon to create an image of Our Lady for the cathedral, right? And so that's the origin of this beautiful image of Our Lady, right? Likewise, in France, we're also told that it's the celebration of Notre-Dame de Bonne Nouvelle in Paris, Our Lady of Good News, who was designated as the patroness of radio and radio operators in 1963. Now we'll head south and head to Italy, where they celebrate our Blessed Lady of Sorrows in Borgo Santa Caterina in Bergamo in Italy. And so the feast is actually the recollection of an apparition which took place in an event that took place in 1602. At midday on that day, a star appeared in the sky with 3 luminous rays coming down towards an image of Our Lady of Sorrows, who that image at the time was like kind of fallen apart and decrepit, right? But those lights, that light from heaven, sort of renewed the statue and made it appear as if it were freshly painted, right? It's that image that you can still see today in the shrine above the principal altar, right? And lastly, we have Madonna della Neve in Bordolano, Cremona, Lombardy in Italy, which is Our Lady of Snow. But curiously enough, on March 4th, 1979, local cyclists took her as their patroness. And so they opened the biking season, that's not like Harley-Davidson biking, but like mountain bike and road bike, on the first Sunday in March with a mass at her shrine, right? So it's found at the edges of the city there. They don't actually know where the shrine itself originates from, right? There's records to it in 1601, when there's a record of the church receiving the visit of the Bishop of Cremona, who found the church in rather precarious conditions, we're told, which probably relates to some certain age of the building. It's probably an old church, right? And so this is the new church, though, has been sort of renovated. The bell tower itself is from 1672, and it was further redone, refinished in 1907, because there was an earthquake in 1802, so they had to fix it, right? And again, like we said, March 4th, 1979, cyclists chose Our Lady of Snow as their patroness, right? And so it's on that day that usually the bishop comes and he blesses them in a special ceremony. And so, yes, that's what we're celebrating today in the Marian world on March 4th. For today's Marian meditation, we begin with meditation 44, entitled The Presentation of the Child. Our first point is, Mary enters the temple. She has been purified, and therefore deemed worthy to enter the temple. How great was her respect and devotion at that moment! She knew the temple was the place of prayer, the place wherein God communicates himself to souls. Although in the temple of the Old Testament he was present rather in a symbolic and figurative way, nevertheless it was the dwelling of the Almighty. Mary reveres and respects the temple where the majesty of God dwells. How would Mary enter our temples? What a lesson for us who sometimes are so disrespectful in these sacred places. When she entered the temple with the child in her arms, she sanctified it. We go to the temple in order to be sanctified. She with her son went to the temple to sanctify the very temple. What recollections must have flooded her mind! In the temple at a tender age, she had been presented by her parents. Thus she had spent the first years of her childhood. There she had passed long hours in prayer and had uttered to the Lord her vow of virginity. How many memories would those holy precincts whisper to Mary! As for you, is the temple speechless? Does it not remind you of graces, of the sacraments, of inspirations, of communions with which you have been favored there? Have you forgotten that in front of that image of Our Lady you received so many signs of the love she bears you? Love the temple, meaning love the church. It must for you be the most longed for of all places. Nowhere will you find God as there. Love the temple, and at the same time respect it. Do not allow anything unworthy of its sanctity. For today's reading from The Admirable Heart of Mary by St. John Eudes, we start chapter 6, The Peace of God Mirrored in the Admirable Heart of Mary. The peace of God is another divine perfection, completely realizing its faithful image in the admirable heart of the Most Holy Mother of God. But before studying the reflection, let us gaze at the original and consider this adorable perfection of the peace of God himself. What is the peace of God? It is a divine perfection consisting, according to St. Dionysius, in the ineffable union of God with himself. God is unutterably united with himself, first of all, by his incomprehensible love for his divine self. Secondly, by his infinite sanctity, which raises him immeasurably above anything that could affect his peace, if this could ever be affected. Thirdly, by his admirable simplicity, which renders all his perfections one single united perfection, which is the equivalent of the divine essence itself. Fourthly, the infinite peace of God is maintained by the union which reigns between the eternal persons, who share one spirit, one heart, one will, one purpose, one power, one wisdom, one goodness, and the same essence. This essence is eternal, impassible, invariable. Hence, nothing that happens in heaven, earth, or hell could ever trouble its peace. God's peace is God himself, who is ever tranquil and unutterable. He is the first and sovereign principle of peace, and entertains an unspeakable horror of all discord and division. He sent his only Son, the Prince of Peace, into the world to extinguish all our enmities with his precious blood, killing the enmities in himself. That's from Ephesians 2:16. To reconcile us to his heavenly Father, as well as to our brethren and to ourselves, and to be himself our peace. For he is our peace. That's Ephesians 2:14. Our Savior accomplished this by destroying sin, the only source of division, and pacifying all creatures in heaven and on earth. He made peace through the blood of his cross, both as to the things that are on earth and the things that are in heaven. That's from the letter to the Colossians, chapter 1, verse 20. Such is the peace of God which St. Justus called the silence of God.
Hello, and we hope that you enjoyed listening to our Marian podcast. In the spirit of Saint Bernard of Clairvaux, we say to you that there is no greater delight than to spread the devotion of Our Lady. We hope you share these sentiments and encourage you greatly to share with a loved one. Know that you are always in our prayers, and we ask that you keep us in yours. God bless.